Well, not all of them. I go to Israel and I do presentations. I don't need to put that up there. But in these parts and in that weird Best Buy, it's fair warning. Funny thing is there's actually a person who shares my rare surname, and he is the exact opposite of me. He's an ordained minister, and he also runs a startup, and he was here today. And we've never met face to face because I think the world would end, but it's worth a check every now and then. This is participatory. Just butt in anytime you want. You have a question, feel free to interrupt me. I haven't timed this, so I might be going a little fast. If I go over something too quickly, stop me.
What's your name?
Susan. Jackass. Anyway, just so you know, this guy in front used to be my boss. I didn't have a choice in the matter. But I'll be trading. Yeah, then you quit. So, if you want to trade insults with me on Twitter, there's my ID, obviously the Minnebar hashtag. So, a little bit about me. 16 years in B2B marketing. Most of that's been in tech. A lot of it's been software as a service. I've been actively consulting either part-time or full-time since 1998. Mostly marketing and strategy. Been getting into mobile, and my clients are usually under $5 million revenue. And more recently, I decided to take the entrepreneurial route with a company that we launched called Polymobile. As you see, we kicked it off and we killed it. So I'll talk a little bit about that and see how it works. It wasn't a bad experience. It wasn't my fault. But nonetheless, it was a great education for all those 10 months. So, let me know a little bit about you. Who's developers in here? Okay, who are business operations guys? Marketing, sales? How about the two of you?
Curious people.
Scary. Okay. If you do exist in Minnesota, don't worry about it. I just want to get a sense of who I was talking to, so I can kind of adapt it from there. Premise. Dating, at least in this presentation, dating equals customer acquisition. And I'll be doing a number of parallels throughout this, the next 45 minutes, proving that, or at least trying to prove that, and trying to measure. It's tongue-in-cheek. Don't take everything too serious. If it's funny, laugh. It's okay. There's no cameras pointing down at you, so they're pointing up at me, and I don't think Best Buy would ever hire me anyway. So, with that, a little touch of wisdom here. My philosophy of dating is to just fart right away. Why the hell did I put that up there?
Did you get the humorless out of the way?
No. We tend to take dating, we tend to take customer acquisition sales so damn seriously that you suck the joy out of it. And you're so paranoid that you're going to make the wrong step, that you have to be someone who you're not. Hell, she can fart straight away. Granted, she's gorgeous, but it gives you insight to just say, look, be yourself. You're going to be a little bit more productive. You're going to be a little bit more successful. And if that means you can blow gas on the first date, more power to you. So, assumptions here. You're dateable. These are assumptions that I'm making in my presentation. So anyone who's a psycho, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you're feeling a little out of place, just go to the door and we'll say it was kept my swearing. You're just not here for hookups. You know that this is not Hollywood. The whole point of all these efforts is to be realistic. There's no ideal way to go dating. There's no ideal way to do sales. It's just the way it happens. And you're willing to invest time and a little bit of money, a little bit of sweat, a little bit of stress into getting it right. And your goal is a long-term, rewarding relationship. Whether that's a personal relationship or a business relationship, will run parallels. Make sense? Any questions? Did I miss any assumptions? Yes, Robbie?
And did you apply this list to yourself before you came in the room?
Oh, hell no. I can't sell to save my ass. No. Anyway, dating, doing sales, it's not easy. You know, on the dating front, courtship is pretty damn tough. Bad dates are pretty common. Yeah, you can't be rushed. You can't push the process through. You can't take side steps. You know, early stages, everyone's hypersensitive. And they shouldn't be. And nothing is instant. You can't wake up the next day and say, I have this huge successful company. Nor can you wake up the next day and say, I'm going to get married after the first night. I'm meeting someone.
Yeah, apparently everything hang.
It's not Hollywood.
Oh.
Gold diggers suck. Unless they're a gold digger. And it requires work to maintain. So if we draw parallels to customer acquisition, prospecting is tough. Bad prospects are galore. So are bad customers. You can't shove someone through the sales process. They go at their own pace. You can try your best to move it along, but in the end, it probably works against you. Prospects are hypercritical. That's just the way it is. Decisions take time. No one's going to spend 10 minutes on a piece of equipment that costs them $50 or $50,000. And tight lips are a pain. Clients need nurturing. Whether they're prospects, whether they're clients, you know, you just can't expect them to perform for you. You have to be there for them throughout the whole process. So, there are 5 stages of relationships. Anyone name any of them? Come on, throw them up. Come on, don't be so difficult.
Denial cue, are we?
Okay. Denial? Anyone? Christ, I'm in Minnesota. Just step up and talk. Come on. Devin?
I would say the initial meeting, introduction. Yeah,
Okay.
Introduction.
All right.
The courtship?
That's probably in there too. Anyone else?
On stage.
Excuse me?
Chaos.
One more time.
Chaos.
Chaos. Ah, lovely.
There's 5 pages, but there's only 4 pages.
Well, courtship infatuation, that's where it all starts. We have the power struggle, trying to figure out who's on top, who's wrong, who's right, all that fun stuff. Stability, after you figure that out, there's a little quiet part in the relationship. If you're lucky, that stability leads to a commitment. And that commitment leads to acceptance and co-creation. Sounds so new agey, that number 5. And that's why I'm not going to cover it. So, point here is we want to focus on how you close that first client. I don't give a shit what happens after you close that client. That's up to you. But the focus of this presentation is on these first 4 steps. Did I miss any of them? Is there ones that I haven't sought out? Believe me, I did not read a dating book to put this up, so hey, if I did, I'd be a sick bastard. Anyway, so let's hit with the first one. Courtship and infatuation. Look at it from a dating standpoint. You know, what's your ideal mate? What's the type of person that gets you excited when you see them? I mean, what draws your spark? You know, where the hell are they? Are you good at it? Or do you hate it? Are you the type of person who loves the chase? Or do you prefer the relationship? You know? It's time to cash sensitive, unfortunately. And there are many prospects. Not all of them are good, but there are many of them. And there needs to be some initial compatibility to get this process up and running. Second guessing happens all the time during this process. And if we draw a parallel to customer acquisition, what is your ideal customer? What are the demographics of your customer? Is it a large company? Is it a company that's based in the upper Midwest? Are they in a particular SIC code? What are the demographics that make up your ideal customer? And if it's just someone with blonde hair, go back to the drawing board. What's the lead generation effort? How do you find that first person? You know, you're not going to spend $1 million on a campaign to get your first customer. That's just not going to happen. But you have to follow a certain process to do that. Let's say your customer is within the wood pulping business, and they happen to be based in the Northeast where all the trees are. So what are the other aspects of it? Where does that wood pulper go for his information? Where does he go to who are his trusted advisors? Anything else along those lines, you have to figure that out. Do we outsource early? Now, if you hate prospecting, and I mean hate prospecting, then you might want to consider either pulling in a new partner or pulling in a consultant, even at this early stage, because your company is going to go nowhere unless you have that in place. You don't have any time or money? What the hell are you doing in business? It's not going to take a lot of time. It's not going to take a lot of money to get your first customer, and it might. You have to be willing to put the time into it. And if you think of these prior dots effectively, that time to get that first client is going to be definitely shorter. You know, how do you qualify? You know, if you want to pick 2 or 3 customers to start out and just kind of test out your system in beta, and you have 100 prospects, what makes one prospect better than the other? What makes them more effective? What weaknesses do they have so if they can't move forward? You know, is there mutual interest between your startup and your prospect? There's got to be some. And you know what? Before you leave the process, reevaluate. You might have the perfect person, but when you sit down and think about it, or when you sit down and you talk to your co-founders, you might want to really consider it before you take it to the next step. So, let's expand these a little bit. The ideal customer, again, develop those initial demographics. Don't develop a complex plan. Do something simple. Get the understanding. You don't have to prospect 5,000 people to find one. Outsource. Or do you have internal talent? If you're not comfortable doing that, shaking the tree, knocking on doors, find someone who is. Time and budget, don't waste either. Don't travel across the world to talk with a perfect prospect when there's someone almost as good, across town. Qualified? Well, how? Is he qualified based on a gut feeling? Is he, or does it make more sense to set up a numerical item? Now, this doesn't require some MIT algorithm to do this. You can just basically set it up and say, what makes a stronger candidate than another, put a numerical value to it, and move forward. Takes maybe an hour, 2 if you don't know what you're doing. Mutual interest, confirm it. One thing I hate about this area is that that's nice means no. And so if you have interest, or if they say that's a great idea, confirm that they actually mean it's a great idea. Confirm that they're willing to put the time and the cash is moving forward on that idea. Otherwise, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And reevaluate again, decide. Go through all the steps. If you have 10 potential prospects and you can't pick on the 10, backtrack and see what are the 2 or 3 that you want to work with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with those first 1 or 2 customers. And you want to pick the right ones. So, second stage of any relationship, the blessed power struggles. You know, why are they there? Because we need to find the other person's strengths and their weaknesses. We also need to deal with those moments where our own veneer cracks, where we say that we had a 1600 on the ACT and we barely made it through college. You know, you got to be prepared for that kind of stuff. It's going to happen. Complaints are always going to arise. Those early pitches in a relationship are kind of painful, but it's part of the process. And then those blessed moments when the X's pop up. Be prepared for that. And then when you need to, lean on the people you know. Get their advice. And rescue the connection if it seems to be waning a little bit. We take this parallel to customer acquisition. The more we know about a particular customer, the more assets that we know that they have. And I don't mean financial assets. I mean sophistication, technical assets. If they have a great product that's a perfect mesh for what you're trying to do, it can be a wide range of things. You know, what are the weaknesses? You're not going to find that out until you learn a little bit more and you focus on 1 or 2 customers. You know, you have a sales guy that claimed the world on your product, and then you get around to it, and whoops, I really didn't mean it that way. Oh, he didn't mean it this way. It's going to happen. And clients expect that, but you got to be prepared for it. How many have had a business partner that can shake the tree really well, but he's a technical moron? Okay.
Well, that was you.
Oh, that's perfect, yeah. So, it happens all the time. You know, you get bogged down in internal discussions, either on your side as a startup or on the potential prospect or client side. And those discussions on whether or not it's a good app, whether or not you trust the people, whether or not you're trustworthy, all of those things can bog you down. You know, competitors pop up. You know, it's a time to lean on your mentors if you're feeling a little overwhelmed. You know, get some advice on what you could do differently to kind of rescue a conversation. Get some angles that you might not think of. Vent everything that you can do, and that's why you have mentors do them. And then regroup. So, you know, as further assets arrive, maybe there are some internal stakeholders that you have not met that can sway that position. They think the world of you. You go the other way as well. You know, check their references. For God's sakes, check their credit if you can. You're going to be sinking hours and hours and hours into a customer, and then when you send that first blessed invoice that you pray that you get $1 back, you know, net 30, and you feel, and they realize that they don't have they have like Class D credits, you're shooting yourself in the foot. There's no way around this one. If you over-promise, you got to eat crow. You know, be prepared for that internal infighting those discussions. They'll rise, own up for what they are, go through them, don't try to ignore them, move forward from that. Get detailed competitive matrices set up even before you start going out. Understand who your potential competitors are. Understand them very well in detail. Understand how you can position your product against what they offer. Because if you don't know that, and a customer who barely understands your product can pop up a competitor in your space, you're going to look like a fool. And when you look like a fool, doors seem to close. Bring in outside influence. If one of your investment team actually knows someone else in the company, pull them in. If your mentor knows the accountant that runs the company or the lawyer that carries it out, you have a sphere of influence outside of yourself. Leverage your mentor's connections and see how well you can benefit to yourself. And book a follow-up meeting with the stakeholders. You'll find up all these ugly things, and it's a great idea before you move forward just to say, hey, look, we discovered these things about it. I double-checked on your questions on this. Regroup internally, regroup with the prospect, everything else along those lines. Next one is stability, of course. So, it's time to, in a relationship, you've gone through the rough patch, time to relax a bit. Spend more time together, don't put anything on it. Maybe it's time to bring in some of your outside friends to get a second opinion. Who knows? Watch out for boredom. Don't assume that you've gone through the rough rapids that everything's fine. You gotta still maintain the relationship. Start discussing long-term plans. But when you pair that over to customer acquisition, for God's sake, don't smother a prospect. Don't send them emails on a daily basis. They got shit to do. You got shit to do. Don't try to get all the nuances and be instantly responsible for all the emails come in. Take your time. Let them breathe. If you want, book some social time. Get some tickets to the Vikings game. Go out and play golf. Try to understand these one or two initial customers as a human, because you're going to be pushing them hard over the next couple of months as your product goes through beta. If you can build some personal rapport at any level, that's going to help you. And it could just be a coffee or lunch or anything like that. You don't have to go to Cancun together. Maybe it's time to pull in some contractors. You're going on in your discussion and you're trying to figure out, okay, we have these assets, we need to start pulling in other people. Maybe it's time to, because during the last process some things popped up and you need to fix some weaknesses. This is the time to do it. Still pay attention to your prospects. Don't ignore them. Don't smother them, but don't ignore them. If you ignore them, they lose interest. Other opportunities look better. And start coming up with a project discussions. What are your timelines? What's kind of your expectations? These will come up every now and then, but start discussing them in a more structured route. There's enough stability in this point of your relationship that you can carry that off with a potential customer. Any questions? Glazed eyes? Is this not making sense? Okay.
Can you use one example from your own experience?
Sure.
Some of it's a little broad, so anytime.
Of course. So, for example, at my startup, what we were doing is we were creating a suite of mobile tools that were going to be aimed at Democratic candidates. And so I reached out to a few of them. I was smothered one of them a bit too much, didn't matter. Wasn't a strong candidate anyway, but he asked a lot of questions and I kind of went overboard. But, excuse me. I know there were some weaknesses or some requests of products that they wanted. We had to pull in potential third parties to get some of the more aspects into it. You know, we had to put in a couple more APIs. We considered hiring another developer on contract just to kind of meet a potential timeline. You know, one of our prospects was the Minnesota PFL, and so I didn't smother him. I had a great kickoff meeting, and I kept in touch about once every 5 days. You know, whether it's not nagging them on something that's like, hey, I thought about this. What's your feedback on it? Hey, did you see this research report that looked at Latino voter trends? All of this stuff that they're not aware or they might not know exists, it's a great time to feed it through. You know, and we started discussing timelines before we even went to an agreement with that. So we were talking potentially about integrating our system for their caucus, you know, for the caucus, which was about 6 weeks ago. So basically our system would handle the load of about potentially 30,000 people who attended caucus night. But that was a discussion that we had early on. So, you know, again, you're not the only thing in their life. Give them some room. You know, that said, try to see another angle on them. Try to be a little bit more social. We all get in our modes when we work, and we try to break out of those modes when we do stuff outside of work. Try to see these potential prospects for who they are, human beings. You know, go ahead.
On golf or sporting event, what is the best way of initiating that talk?
Well, I mean, if you look around someone's office and they have, if they have like the schedule for the Minnesota Twins, easy enough with that one. Look for cues around there. Pick up conversations every now and then. It doesn't have to be a sporting event. It could be just lunch.
But many times there are corporate policies on any gifts or anything like that. How do you something around that? Or what is the typical advantage?
I worked with a number of startups and I've never crossed that path.
Startups,
yeah.
The lunch. I take people to lunch.
Yeah. You know, if they can't accept I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense if you're trying to sell within a governmental organization. Yeah, they tend not to. They tend to be frowned upon that. You're trying to sell your product when there's some elected official in place. Got it. But try to think of an opportunity of where you can pull them outside of their element, pull them outside of their office, outside of all the distractions, and just talk to them. You know, as I said, pay attention. You don't have to talk to them every day, but a touch point once or twice a week is not bad. Some customers are going to require a lot more hand-holding. Some are going to require a lot less. You got to figure out where that happy moment is. And if you think you figured it out and they push back, just apologize and readjust. You know, draft the plans, talk budgets. Try to get a sense of how they want to scope out this early stage. You don't have to iron out details. You don't have to glaze out specifics. You don't have to drop out, 30-page reports on it, but you should start the discussion now. So, and we come to commitment. You know, it's a time where everyone reevaluates potential partner. Yeah, they thought about it throughout the whole stage, but this is getting serious now. And so there's a lot of sleepless nights. or discussions or questions or anything else along those lines if they're all internal? You know, what are the mutual benefits? What are the strengths? You know, what are the weaknesses that that person counters to, you know, your strength? So on and so forth. You know, how many people got divorced because they didn't realize that their husband or wife had a spending habit? Has this not happened to anyone?
Not yet.
All of them.
Well, you know, I had a couple friends, one here and then one in California, who didn't realize that their now wife was 60 grand in debt and credit cards. You know, that's a discussion you want to have before you get married. And if there's some uncomfort with that discussion, then that's a red flag. God, I sound like a advice columnist up here, but you know, hell, try to move in together if it's appropriate and people don't frown upon that. You know, if it gets really serious, book a minister. You know, and then get hit. So, from a customer acquisition standpoint, you know, reevaluate that person. Do some serious discussion talking about this person as a potential partner. You know, do they have the sophistication to deal with the bumps that go away along a traditional beta process? Do you have to handhold them to the point where they're just going to sink the profitability of this project? Are their expectations unrealistic? You know, also talk about what's great about them. But before you're willing to step forward, just don't say, oh, someone likes me, you know, let's get going. No. I've seen a lot of startups get killed by picking the wrong early beta users.
We just had a release. We're an existing company, not our first product.
Sure.
Pick new customers, release a new version of a product, entirely all over the place. We do EMS software. And our first hit on when we need beta customers, let's talk to this guy, was the neediest son of a bitch I've ever spoken to. We gave him a week to get through me saying, no, that's never going to be ready in time for a really important event. It was after that important event, I called him up. We talked about it. And in establishing what would and would not happen, doing this reevaluation, he realized that the stuff he was bitching about was not a deal breaker. He was just, by habit, whining. But it was still a great fit. And because he had such a small group to work with in this beta, it actually gave remarkable feedback because he could empower all of his users to give us the kind of information we needed. But that was only after we established a baseline of like, this straight up did not happen. Here's the team we work with. So this is the reevaluation even after you get to a decision point.
You know, it's one of my first gig when I moved to Minnesota was a company called Tech 80. And we made embedded controls for automation products. So we would manage these high-speed servo and stepper motors that would go into pick-and-place robots. Really boring shit. But, you know, the products are very esoteric. And so when you have a beta user, you want to pick them very carefully. And so this one guy knew a guy, and so this guy was brilliant. And it just so happened that he was a PhD candidate at MIT, electrical engineering. So I was like, oh yeah, you want him to test this out. And I don't know if that's the actual story or that, you know, the punchline of this is so ridiculous. But anyway, we kept on sending him a pre-production version of a controller. And he always had problems with it. He couldn't get it working. And so we FedEx it back and plug it in, and worked fine for us. And then we send it back to him. And this happened like 3 or 4 times. You know, it's to the point where we had application engineers swearing, you know, about this guy. And so one of the days, I was walking by and I saw one of our support guys on the floor peeing in his pants laughing so hard. Like, okay, what did I miss here? Any idea? Take a wild guess of what was so funny. You didn't take it out of the static bank. What? You had this computer board that gets clicked in there, and you kept on plugging the damn thing in, and there was not making any connection.
Well, at least the bad word.
God, and so, but this guy was vetted. This guy was at MIT. He was dealing with all this stuff, and God didn't understand basic science. So I don't know if it was actually MIT or some place across the way. Not sure, but that kind of fun can happen. Honestly, what will both of you gain? When I looked at potentially working with Minnesota DFL, I knew that I could probably get 10% of those 30 to 45,000 people to sign up for a mobile list. And it would create a very rapid response system for the DFL to connect with their core supporters, something they've never had in their history. We could do it cost effectively. So that was a serious benefit for them. Benefit for us is that we're working with a statewide political organization that had a chair that was widely recognized as someone who was forward-thinking, and so that could piggyback later on. So it was very beneficial for both sides. Great thing about the DFL is we could easily validate the financials. So they were broke, and so we adjusted our price accordingly. Basically, we narrowed it down to basically pizza money for them to do it. We loaned myself to them to work on the strategy portion of it. So the founder was going through and actually working on a preliminary idea. We would basically do all the legwork for it. We wanted to see this work. We got to talk to our attorney about various issues and about how we could structure this. It was getting very close. And in the end, we didn't celebrate. It turns out we didn't realize how broke they were, and so honestly, it's like for them to build a list of 5,000 people would cost them about $500. Pocket change for something like this, but their priorities were elsewhere. We went through this entire process. We had multiple different meetings. We talked them up, talked them down, talked to all their staff left and right, and in the end, we didn't dig deep enough. So, never got married. So, just a quick pushback. Pull together co-founders. Pull together your board. All of your mentors. Talk from many different angles about this person, this potential client. Had I done that, had I pulled in a few more political operatives, they could have pushed back and said, look, they don't have the money to do that. Why don't you cut it by a third? Do a SWOT analysis, easy enough. Goes without saying, I would bet that 90% of you who go through this process never do that until it's too late. Do it early, and if you don't do it early, just fucking do it. Bring in the developers. Talk specific details. Let them understand how to integrate with their own systems. Get the text together with the text to talk tech, for lack of a better phrase. Draft a legal agreement, and then if it goes forward, everything's great. You just nailed your first customer. Questions?
What's a SWOT?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and what's the T?
Threats.
Thank you.
What was the T?
Threats.
Threats. Yeah.
I always forget the damn T. Yes.
I want to just make a comment about your DFL story, that most people confuse selling as they think of the end process as being the most important. I've been a salesman, sales manager, and I used to think this way, that you want to hire people who know how to close. They go for the throat. They nail it. What I learned painfully 20 years ago at a startup was that qualification skills
I'll freely admit that the opportunity of, just so you're aware, if you want to download it, it's a QR code, or you can just key in that URL below that, and it'll even route to a mobile site. I'm fancy like that. To get this presentation, or just drop me an email, whatever. So, get back to what you were saying, Robbie. We were so excited about the opportunity. We thought that cutting it down to $300 was nothing. We saw that within the series of meetings, they were always pulling in outsiders. They were having people talk to us. And what the true reason why Polymobile is frozen right now is that Square, familiar with Square, the little dongle that plugs into your smartphone or tablet, announced that both Romney and Obama were adopting their platform. We heard rumors about that, but we couldn't compete on a price point. And I go, well, all right, I'm gonna do conversations, and though that little feature was not a huge revenue source for us, it was our special sauce. It was what opened telephone calls, it's what booked us meetings. And I put in a call to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, DCCC, and then they were already beta testing it on that level. So the reason why we didn't move forward on it was because we were 4 weeks away from releasing a beta on that, and they're already playing with it. And it's a small enough audience. Our target market for the first year was 469 House and Senate races. And so when you have a bulk of them adopting another platform, it's time to close shop. But I can honestly say that the gut kick that I got was not Square moving in, but it was how disappointed I was after that failure of DFL. And I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm not saying it's my fault. Probably a mix of both, but it took the steam off of our momentum. So it happens. It's a startup. You move on.
Comment on that. I've been told that interest is cheap, and I think you experienced that at DFL, with getting their interest was free, and apparently they didn't have better things to do with their time, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Especially some big organizations.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the beta customers. What kind of pricing policy do you suggest?
Well, you got to realize that they're not getting a finished product. And this is where you have to really consider the benefits. If you're in a situation where the beta user is willing to pay you to develop your product, great. Take them up on that. That's one of the strengths that potential customer has. But if they are looking to test the tool for free, let's say you have a mobile app that is aimed at independent doctors, ones that are not part of the system.
You mean both of them?
Whatever. So you have to really do your gut. I mean, what's more valuable, that you burn through all the problems with a very good beta user, or that you get a little bit of money from it? That's tough. It depends on the product. It's a tough question to answer. Yes?
One of the observations I've made is importance of controlling burn rate towards customer acquisition, because I have seen some startups going out of business because they could not control the burn rate. They spent way too much money in trying to acquire their initial set of customers. And that's one big.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's like, I had a client of mine who was offered a speaking gig in London, so he went to it, and then he decided to stiff me on a bill. And it wasn't a big bill, but it was like, all right, jackass, you have no representation wanted. Granted, it was prestigious that you could have a speaking gig there, but then you can't pay the final bill. What's going on here? So you have cash flow issues, please. So, that kind of stuff happens all the time. You got to be aware of it. You got to really get a gut feel. And the wrong partner can kill a startup. It can really make someone's day, week, month, 6 months bad. So, any other questions? Feedback? Right, wrong, obvious, not so obvious?
One more question I have is,
Sure.
you mentioned that it was about $500 cost that GFL would have incurred. But for that, you went through all these efforts and you met an attorney. Attorney typically costs $200-300 an hour.
Well, I threw out that number right in the meeting, they didn't blink. So, I go, look, we want to test the system out. This is just basically our costs. And they're like, yeah, that's pizza money. And then in the end, it was, I don't know what kind of pizza they were buying, but, And it could have been a number of other reasons. It could have been something else that they didn't talk, but that was the excuse that they gave. Who knows? Yeah.
One thing I found is, piggybacking on his idea, I was a recruiter for the Army for 5 years, and they've got this acronym, AppleMD, it's like pre-qualify applicants. And over time, people think everybody that wants to join the Army can, but it's a complete lie. About 40% of people that are actually of age are physically qualified to join, or mentally, or whatever. But what would happen is, the people that wanted to join really bad, they come up to you, and you're like, I know this person is going to be qualified. And you ask them the questions, and they're not qualified, 80% of the time. So what happens is, people that aren't qualified for things, they try and go and get the things other places. They're actively searching for somebody that'll go with them, but they're just not qualified. So just because you want somebody to be qualified doesn't mean they're going to be.
What was the acronym?
You can never be. It was specific to the Army, if you know that. But the idea of what he said when he says have 5 or 6 things that your target client needs, and always check for them before you spend more than 15 minutes on the phone or whatever with them.
The other comment is make sure you know who the actual decision maker is. There's nothing worse. I know a situation where there was a $15 million, I used to work at Cray Research, which some older people might remember, supercomputer company, and at one point, the president of General Motors said yes to a $15 million Cray purchase. They paid the salesman's commission, and 6 months later, the board overruled the president of General Motors and canceled the order. They eventually did buy it, but it took another year or 2. So make sure you really understand the financial decision tree at your customer.
And a lot of people want to pretend like they're that person, or they want to be the gatekeeper to the real person. And then you go to the meeting, and then you've got 2 or 3 people in there. You're like, well, what about if you said you could say yes to this? Just ask the tough questions before you waste your time.
Yeah, don't confuse recommenders with decision makers. And then there's also the technical decision maker, at least remember from my corporate sales days, but then you can run into just the purchasing mess of then they got to get the purchase order cut, and then you get into a bureaucracy.
And really, you don't in sales, you don't make any money. Nothing happens until you get paid. Let's everybody understand that. You can have 17 purchase orders. If you didn't have a sales fee, you get funded.
I usually wait until I spend the money and then I count it.
I don't spend it until I get funded.
That's good.
Any other questions, comments?
Nice side of that.
All right, thank you.